Welcome, and today we are going to be exploring the use of the psychoanalytical lens in Frankenstein. So, a little bit of background information. Frankenstein was written by Mary Wollstonecraft Shelley in 1817, and as stated before, the critical lens we're going to be exploring is the psychoanalytical lens. So, Frankenstein by Mary Shelley is a story that includes numerous themes and ideas related to the real world. Upon reading this book, a theme that I think Mary is trying to tell us is that in order to be successful, self sacrifice is a necessity. Now, what does this mean? Well, I think the answer is fairly intuitive, and we'll get back to this question in the conclusion. For now, I'll let it simmer in your head. Robert Walton is a character in the beginning of the book who has ambitions of tasting success and being greater than he is now. We see this by how much Walton sacrifices his body, his time, and is an emotional rock that others may go to for support. This can be seen through the psychoanalytical lens, which explores his dreams, motivations, and subconscious desires. On the ship, Walton sacrifices his body. He writes, I voluntarily endured cold, famine, thirst, and want of sleep. Now, by voluntarily putting himself into the situation, he probably had some idea of the trouble he would be putting himself into. He chose to face adversity now so that the payoff later will be better. Another example of this is mentioned when he refers to a cold wind. Inspirited by the wind of promise, my daydreams became more fervent and vivid. So, in addition to putting yourself out there, physical sacrifice may be required. By having these desires, he voluntarily endured hardship. He was repeatedly in times of cold, famine, thirst, and want of sleep, and suffered greatly. Despite this, he was not discouraged and continued on with the expedition. This is representative of the hardships of our life and how we should respond to them. In his head, he remains hopeful and does not falter. The cold wind he refers to is a sign of discomfort to many people. When people are uncomfortable, they are very likely to pull out of new situations. Walton thinks differently and is actually encouraged by this new feeling. He imagines the things he will be able to accomplish when he passes this hardship. Additionally, Walton sacrifices his time. He says, I often worked harder than the common sailors during the day and devoted my nights to the study of mathematics, the theory of medicine, and the greatest branches of physical science. When the other sailors are resting during the night, Walton is working and gaining further knowledge. He understands that this knowledge will be important in his future, and so he sacrifices his free time and studies these topics. Furthermore, Walton's motivations are solidified because he has devoted his time to mathematics, medicine, and physical science. Other sailors would use their time in the night to rest and recover, but Walton wants to push on and learn and educate himself. He has dreams of gaining more knowledge, which will lead him to a better potential future. Finally, Walton sacrifices his emotional welfare to support his peers. He writes, I am required not only to raise the spirits of others, but sometimes to sustain my own when theirs are failing. Part of being successful is stepping up and being a leader. He sacrifices his emotional welfare so that he can keep his companions upbeat and positive. We can infer that the subconscious desire driving him is the idea of bettering himself and being better than others. This idea, at first, may be seen in a negative light. However, this mindset has led him to show that he is willing to sacrifice himself and his well-being for the sake of others. Robert Walton in Frankenstein describes the struggles he has to face. Throughout these struggles, he has increased his chances of becoming a successful person. The passages examined all lead to the theme that self-sacrifice is indeed a vital component of tasting success. Let's look back at our initial question. What does this specific theme statement mean? If you ask anyone who is successful, whether it be in business or in even smaller projects, they will always tell you that they have to work hard to achieve their goals. Working hard requires you to devote time into that project and to limit any outside activities. This is just one example of self-sacrifice. This passage also tells us that the subconscious mind can affect the actions of a person, depending on their goals and perceptions of the world around them. People strive for success because they want to improve their lifestyles. The psychoanalytical lens helps us decipher people's goals and can then lead us to predict their future interactions and outcomes. Thank you.